Welcome back to MechaWill News. Today we're going to be talking about a new Dark Souls 3 video that just dropped. About 16 minutes of gameplay, and me as a super fan, I'm going to give you my gameplay impressions on it, so stick around. So here we've got Dark Souls 3. So what you can see in the background is we've got some really cool level design, nice art direction happening. You can see there's two bridges there in the back that really remind me of something that's kind of out of Bloodborne, something like the city of Yharnam, which is really nice and grand, and it makes a lot of sense seeing as this is in Bloodborne's engine. Now all this footage was taken from IGN's video, which I believe they got from the video that was captured at Gamescom. So it's pretty potato quality, I have to say, but it's alright. We can still check out different things. Now, if you look at, you can see the UI is very similar, and you can see here we've got throwing knives just like normal. The character is picking up another item there with a familiar glow. So the UI you can see in the bottom left-hand corner it's all similar. It's all standard to Dark Souls. They didn't go the Bloodborne route and change it to make it a little more cleaned up. They went back to Dark Souls. So you can see right away they're going for a really classic kind of feel to the series, which is nice. It's Dark Souls 3, and they're continuing from Dark Souls. It's what I like to see, really. So what you can see here is you've got the player is stepping into a new area. This is going to be the first level that you appear in, and immediately he sees a giant dragon in the background. And the dragon is very important to Dark Souls lore. If you guys know anything about Dark Souls lore, the everlasting dragons, the stone dragons, and I imagine this is going to be a big part of the lore of the game. So it's really interesting that we see one here in the first level. Of course, here's a better shot of it. Miyazaki himself stated that he really enjoys having dragons in the first level of the game, so I think we can infer that maybe this is probably the first level of the game that they're going through, the Undead Burg of Dark Souls 3, so to speak. So we get into some combat here. Now we've got a kite shield, and it looks like basically a long sword or a straight sword, and he's going to jump into combat with this guy here. You can see all these other enemies around him are all kind of praying, and they're not really aggroing except for the middle guy. There's a guy in the background who is, I believe, he's ringing some sort of bell, and we'll see this later on in the clips. But it's really important to notice that, because it's a function of the game that I think is really cool, and it's something that Bloodborne did for a moment. You can see a much clearer picture of him there. But also, while we're here and we can see this shot, I'd also like to take a notice. Up in the top left corner, you can see that there's a small number below his Sunbro sign, which says 18. That's something you're going to want to keep in mind, because I believe it is the combat arts. And what's really cool about the combat arts to me is it seems to me like they're taking a route kind of like you would have casts for magic, but this is for combat. So you'll see later on in the clips exactly what that means. You can see we've got fire bombs, and he's got 10 Estus flasks. Whether or not you start with 10 Estus flasks remains to be seen, but it appears that Estus is back. And of course, here he is in a fight scene, just trying to test out some of the moves here, which is really cool. The enemies seem pretty similar to what you would see in Dark Souls. Here we've got some weird kind of enemies and designs. You can see in the background, it's a nice bright orangish sky, which is kind of foreboding, and again reminds me of something like Bloodborne is. So they're taking a lot of direction from that. But what I think is really cool once we get to an interior shot here. So we've got the torch, which is a function that Dark Souls 2 had, which they took from the Dark Souls 2 game and eventually was in Bloodborne. I'm really glad that they're bringing it back. It's a cool function. And it's also very necessary, as you'll see. This is really lighting up the area here. You can see how much the light is affecting how you can see and all that kind of stuff. This is really giving him a good area to look at. And it's a really good mechanic to bring on back. But you can also see that the way the interior is designed is a lot like Demon Souls, which I really love. So here's exactly what it looks like without the torch. So that the area becomes pitch black, and it's actually really dark. It was hard to see. I'll link the original video below so that you guys can actually check out the video that was obtained by IGN. But here we're going to be kind of dissecting and discussing the different clips here. The character then moves on to find a gravestone, which is really odd to me when I saw this. I'm not exactly sure what the purpose or the meaning of this is. But basically, as you can see, the character finds this gravestone here in this the lower part of where he was going, and he prays to it. He kneels to it as though he's offering something. I don't know if he's offering some form of humanity, if he's offering some sort of souls, or if he's just merely kneeling to it. It almost seems kind of like the animation for when you would light a bonfire. So he takes a look at it, and immediately when he kneels on it, some text pops up. Excuse me, some text pops up that says, grave of a nameless retainer raised his sword for the Lord of Cinder. So this is really interesting in terms of, and he stands back up and you can see the text a little bit more clearly there. This is really interesting for the lore of the game. I'm not entirely sure what the lore is going to be like, but it seems to be revolving around these Lords of Cinder, which we can see here in the gameplay video, which I think is really cool. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen, what's going to go on here, but our character continues his journey, and he picks up a greatsword here, one of my personal favorite weapons. So that's what's happening in this picture. You can also see, again, the lighting, the darkness. It really kind of plays an important role, as it did in Dark Souls 2, especially Scholar of the First Sin, and Bloodborne. Now, here you can see the greatsword that he just picked up. It's pretty massive, pretty long. Reminds one of, the Zweihander or the Claymore or something like that. Nice and thin, but long, and it takes a lot of weight in it. But it also knocks enemies back a lot. So here we've got a great shot of the Estus animation. Notice how the flames are like wrapping around the character's body. I always thought that was really cool. So looking at that just seems really cool to me to see kind of the amount of thought and design that they put into it. And he loops back around. And here's another great aspect. So you can see that the level design, the majestic level design of Miyazaki is back. You can see that the dragon that we met earlier, but we're in a different location. So what you have is basically you have an area that's wrapping around, this central theme of this dragon. You can see it from all different parts of the level, which I think is a really cool. I think it really kind of shows how much they're bringing back the intuitive and brilliant level design. You can see another picture of the dragon here. But then, of course, as we move on here, you can see what the dragon's purpose is. So if you've ever played Dark Souls, Demon Souls, you know exactly what the dragon's purpose is in the first level. It's to constrict movement based on a certain area. Now, this one is really interesting to me because you can see he's starting his flame up in there. And he's continuing in the next shot here. But in Demon Souls, the dragon constricted the movement across a bridge, and as well as in Dark Souls. But this one, it seems to not only be taking a bridge, but also a high path and a low path, and it seems to adjust its flame based on where you're positioned. So it becomes a lot like a puzzle trying to get through, which is something I always loved about the dragons, even in Dark Souls and Demon Souls. It was more like a big puzzle. You could go out and straight off fight the dragon, but it was mostly foolhardy if you wanted to try that, because most people wouldn't succeed unless they knew some tricks here. So you can see he's roasting all the enemies just like normal, and this is a great shot, I think. You can see the dragon's wings as he gets under him just like stretch open and loom over the character, which really gets this sense of foreboding and this nice kind of like oppressive atmosphere that I felt while watching the video with this character rolling through. So we get to do a fight here with an enemy. Here we get a good look at some of the enemies that we have in here. They really look like a lot of the enemies in Demon Souls and Dark Souls first level. Basically just standard knights, a lot of undead, a lot of hollows. This one's got some armor and proved a little bit difficult for our friend here. He should have been using his shield a little bit more, but that's all right. So I'd like to notice in the top left corner, the number that was at 18 has now gone down to 16. And this is because something happened in the video, which is a little hard to get on the screenshots. But basically what's happening here is he basically like two-handed his greatsword and used a very special move. And I believe this is what the weapon arts are. And every time he used this move, the counter went down. So that's why I think it's kind of like cast like magic. So I imagine maybe these will get replenished at the bonfire. He's having some difficulty with this enemy here. As I said before, he's struggling with him, so he's got to chuck some more Estus. What I love, and some people didn't really notice, if you look down at the Estus right now, you can see that the art has changed depending on how many Estus that he's drinking. The more Estus he drinks, the art on the Estus bottle goes down as though he's taking even more and more swigs. And you can see later on when he gets down to like 2 and 1, the bottle is almost empty. And this is just an incredible level of detail that I love to see in From Software's games, and I'm really glad that they brought it back. So, again, he was having a lot of difficulty with this knight, and this is where he died. So you can see the particle physics. You can see you've got that classic green glow where, his soul is escaping, and this is death here for him. So it's really cool. I wanted to get a shot of the classic. He was backed up in a corner, which is why the camera's all wonky here. But here you can get a much better shot of basically what happens. You basically dissipate into these particles, and that's when you die. And this is you can also, I'd like to check out just in the background, you can see a little bit more of the great level design and great artistic design. So they still have the classic, of course, they still got the classic "You Died" screen. Nothing has changed from that. Nothing it appears to be. They've kept it the same basically throughout Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2, and Bloodborne, relatively, which is really glad to see. But I wanted to point that out. Here, the video skips a little bit. You can see his weapon arts has gone back up to 17. You imagine he starts with 20, and he's used a couple at this point. He gets into another battle with this foe here, and he still has some more difficulty, which is why you can see he's chugging the Estus again. So he runs on back, and you can see I wanted to get a shot of what the souls look like. So this is important because Bloodborne introduced an aspect where your souls would get sucked up back into the previous enemy or the enemy that was around the area where you died, and you had to kill that enemy to get your souls back. It appears that this is not the case. So it looks like the souls are dropped straight on the floor again, and that's exactly what's happening here. So he picks up his souls retrieved. That's the normal sign. So you can kind of see exactly how it's laid out. It's just so classic Dark Souls. Everything just seems to appear like an actual sequel from Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2, which is really a good thing. Now, I don't know if I discussed it that much. I know I stated it earlier, but you can see in the top left corner, he's a Sun Bro. So it is already confirmed that there will be some sort of Warriors of the Sun Covenant, and of course Covenants in general in this game. Again, very classic Dark Souls, but it's just really nice to have that confirmation, especially because as we've deduced, he's probably in the first few levels of the game, which means that maybe, Covenants, maybe the Sunbro Covenant is something you can get into right away. So he used a great tactic here, which I think is awesome. The knight that he was having so much trouble with, he took it out to his aggro range, back to where he ran back from the dragon. And he used the dragon's flames here to torch the enemy. And the only way this could have worked is if the aggro range of the character. Oh, and here, okay, so let me change tactics a little bit here. We've got a great shot of a backstab here. So backstabs are just, they're just a really great kind of thing in the games, but they've always been a little bit wonky. The range has always been way too wide. But here you can see the range is really tight, especially when you watch the video. It seems very kind of constricted, like you actually have to get the right spot. And what really impressed me was that the visuals of the backstab were just incredibly fluid. It didn't appear like an animation was happening. It just appeared like a part of the dance of the battle, which seemed to be really cool to me. We also got a shot here. You got some ledges with items on it, just like classic Dark Souls. Risk reward, you go out to get the item. If you fall, you're going to get yourself hurt or killed, but if you succeed, you get yourself an item. So it's really cool. And also, again, I stated this earlier, but take a look at the walls. So you got these wooden beams on the walls, and you got this nice kind of cracked gray stone, and this all is like really aesthetically similar to Demon Souls. So I really love the interior designs and how they really seem like very classic Demon Souls, which is awesome. It's something that I didn't really expect, but it's also like Demon Souls is one of my favorite games, and I think it really brought the atmosphere. So bringing in that Demon Souls art style in the insides with Dark Souls kind of mechanics and Bloodborne's engine really brings kind of like a beautiful game together. So here we got a shot of some more of the enemies that he's fighting here. You can see also in his quick bar, it's fading now, but he's got throwing knives and he's got fire bombs. Those are all confirmed at this point. This enemy's got a nice big long halberd, and he has some trouble with this guy too, but he takes care of him. So you can see that the enemies, like I said before, there's a few coming up later that aren't as humanistic. But the enemies in most of this gameplay seem to be relatively human. Now, this is a great shot here. So he comes down. He's going through this dark kind of cellar here. He's got to use his torch every now and then to light up the area, which, again, I think is great. They should keep that with the final build. So he comes up to this door and tries to open it. And, of course, with most Dark Souls games, as you're familiar, it's locked. So this is something that's is really simple. And to most people, it'd be like, oh, well, I mean, that's silly. Why would you want to point that out? But it just shows that there are ways to loop around, and it shows that there are shortcuts and paths to go, and this just kind of like accentuates and really kind of strengthens the level design. Now, here's a really crappy shot here. I apologize there. This is my greatest shot that I could get of basically that enemy is ringing the bell. So I told you we saw an enemy like that earlier, but he rings the bell, and immediately when he rings the bell, all of these other enemies start swarming after this guy. So you can see here's the shot where he's running away from all the enemies that are swarming him. They're coming out of the tunnel back to swarm him, which is really... It's something that happens in a lot of the other Souls games. And here's you can see the amount of enemies that he's having to fight because of that bell guy ringing the bell. So it's kind of like a watchman or something like the mind flayers in Demon Souls where they ring the bells and you have to be wary of danger. So that's really cool. We got a nice shot here. Green blossoms are in the game, so green blossoms in most games, they were just basically to help improve stamina recovery, which is great, but it's just nice to see that you've got more and more kind of items being confirmed in the game. Especially charcoal pine resin was a big one for me to see here. So you can see that we've got charcoal pine resin, which is just amazing. It's great to see that the resins are back and they're not taking the form that Bloodborne took. They're, again, just to reiterate, just very classics. So he gets to a dead end here, but you can see that wall right there, that wooden wall, really looks like it's breakable. So, well, that's what I thought. When he was running around the whole area, it really looked like he could break that and get to a different area. But, of course, the player didn't see it himself. So he's just running around this area, which seems like a dead end. And he runs over here. There's basically a corridor. It's a nice open landscape area, which is something, again, I want to touch on. It's just really beautiful, but yeah, we'll get onto that later on. As you can see, Dark Souls 3 seems to be taking a lot of direction from its predecessors. You can see a lot of elements of Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2, and even Bloodborne within the gameplay. The gameplay seems to be consisting of a lot more fluid, a lot more quicker movements, a lot of great art design that you can see in the vistas and the locations around the world, and some great level design, especially from Miyazaki, also co-directed with Tanamura, who worked on the Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin. So with all of these different features coming together in Dark Souls 3, you can definitely be excited for what's going to come in store. We can see with the power of the next generation systems and with the PCs that it's going to be on, it allows Miyazaki and the other designers of From Software to take a much wider approach to the game and open up a lot more areas and shortcuts and stuff like that. We can see some great systems in there, like the new weapon arts system, and we can see some great little things, like even the Estus seeming to decrease in its art and its visual while you take more sips from it. Given all these different things with your backstabs and your parries and the art design and the nice, great art direction, I think you can expect a lot from this next iteration of Dark Souls. So as you can see, as I was talking about before, the player gets to this nice area that's a little bit higher, so you can see, just look in the background, look at the environment and the outside and just the way that everything is designed and how open everything feels, and it's just so beautiful and gorgeous. I really like to show this shot. You can see there's some praying people there, and he gets a new weapon here, so these are really cool. These are the Legion Scimitars. You look at the icon. There's already 2 swords in the icon, so this sword is the weapon is actually a pair of swords, and it's something that's kind of different than what you would normally see, which is where you would just get 2 of the same swords and equip them in both hands. This one equips in both hands automatically when you use the weapon arts, which is something that's very interesting. So again, he goes into action here. You can see his Estus again is just getting a little bit lower, so you can see just the color of the green starting to fade, starting to get a little bit stronger in the orange. He comes up to an enemy here and he's taking care of him. You can see the curved sword, the Legion Scimitars. They're nice and short, but they're very quick, and they're basically a lot like the scimitars of Demon Souls and Dark Souls 2. Very short, but he gets into this nice power stance, and well, not power stance. I don't want to say that. I don't know exactly what's going on, but eventually he uses some sort of button, some sort of something or other to change his stance, which again I believe is the weapon art that they're talking about, and he moves to kind of a more of a dual wielding two-handed stance. You can see in the icon on the bottom left corner, his shield is now grayed out, and now it's just the 2 Legion Scimitars. Again, paired as one weapon, which is just something really interesting and not seen before in other games. So again, this battle is really hard to capture, but he gets into this stance and starts whipping out with a lot of cool, kind of more fluid movements, a lot more agile, a lot quicker. Something I want to know about the combat, which I noted a little bit earlier, is that it is indeed a lot quicker. Maybe not as quick as Bloodborne, but just a lot quicker. You can see here a good shot of him basically just holding the 2 and kind of what it looks like after he's defeated all of his enemies, which is nice. And of course, you can see that for now, his sword arts, as he tests them out here after he's killed everybody, you can see actually the number in the middle of going down while he's testing them. So this is kind of more a little bit of definitive proof that weapon arts seem to decrease, and you seem to have a limit to how you can use them. Again, I imagine they get replenished at a bonfire. This is just a great picture here. So he's walking across these rooftops, which is just really cinematically speaking, just a really great feeling for as a character. But you can see there's all of these hollows up there on the roof. So he's going up there to meet him. They're all kind of praying. And again, this is where the majesty of the level design comes in. You can see the dragon from all these different parts of the area. There's all these different paths to take and all these sorts of things, but you can always look up in like the top left or the top right and see the dragon where you were before. The dragon is waking up at this point. He was sleeping earlier. But here's just something really weird and grotesque. So he goes up to attack this hollow, and something explodes out of the ground. And basically it's this giant grotesque kind of monster. It seems kind of almost out of Resident Evil, or again, a little bit more of a Bloodborne aesthetic. It's kind of like it's black and it's spindly and it's got it's almost like a muck, which is really kind of interesting. So he, of course, being freaked out as I would be, takes a step back and takes his fire bombs out and starts burning it. The fire seems very effective. It seems to burn this creature very well. If you play Demon Souls, it really reminds me of the real King Allant, like just kind of how the pathetic the creature was and how it moved and how it had all these like weird appendices and all these kinds of things. So he's taking care of this creature right now, which is really cool, but it was just really unexpected and almost a little bit frightening for it to just kind of pop out like that. Please take a look down at the Estus now. So if you've been checking the Estus like I've been asking you to, you can see that, you know, the art style, the more he's been drinking, the more that it's been going down. And again, there's just a beautiful attention to detail, which I really love. So here I wanted to get a good shot. You got ladder sliding down going back. Nowhere throughout the video did I ever see anybody fast climbing up the ladder like Dark Souls 2 brought, which personally, and Bloodborne also implemented. Personally, I believe that is an improvement, and they've been increasing ladder speed since Demon Souls, because Demon Souls had like incredibly slow ladder speed. But he slides on down to this new area. You can see how big this first level is, just all these splitting paths. There's so much that this guy didn't explore, and it all seems to loop around on each other. But down here is just a situation that I really like to show. All of these knights that seem to be kind of dead, with, you know, swords stuck out of them and just kind of lying on the ground. They don't aggro on this guy at all. And you can see that there's kind of like a better shot here, especially of the knight on the left, where he's like reaching out for the sword that's stuck in the ground. But it's just the feel, the atmosphere, especially of this area, is just really great. And actually, there's something really cool closer to the end, atmosphere-wise, that is just really kind of mind-blowing. So you can see he sees this enemy in the distance. This enemy is a lot bigger than all the enemies in the previous that he's previously fought, and you can see he's a little bit hesitant to go down and meet him, as would I be. This seems to me kind of like the Black Knight, or kind of like the big fat knights in Bloodborne. Really like a cross between kind of the fat officials in Demon Souls and like Smo, which is really cool. That's something I read on Reddit. I quite agree with the author of that comment. So this character is just kind of like, he's pretty quick, he's pretty tough, and this guy has a lot of difficulty with him. He starts using some of his weapon arts. As you can see, the number is decreasing there, and he switches to a quicker weapon. You know, he was using the greatsword for a while, but he's got the Legion scimitars, and then he switched back to his sword. So here he is, and he takes care of him. This right here is a shot of an animation of one of the attacks that the enemy has. Basically, he explodes into like all of these beams and pillars of light that seem to damage the player. Again, it's really impressive, very visually impressive. You can see a better shot here. The player backs away right away, as I would, because it seems like this attack would like really heavily damage you. But the enemy kind of like almost like charges up and then explodes in all of these kind of pillars of light, which you can see a lot better here. So you can see the pillars of light, they're small, but they're various, and they seem to surround the enemy. It seems to be more of like a close range attack, kind of something that you would expect to have if you're kind of getting a little bit too greedy, if you're getting too close to the character. But it seems to be easily, well, you can see the light is traveling all around the room. And it seems to be put in random spots, but it seems to be easily countered by kind of just running away from the enemy and taking your time and looking around the arena. I just thought that was a really cool attack, and I thought that was a really cool particle effect. So that got me really hyped for kind of what the enemies are going to bring and what kind of new attacks they got. So here he's just going on. He's fighting. Again, look, 2 Estises. Look at the down at the bottom. His Estises are getting low, and so the art style, the Estus is basically draining at this point. He's taking too many swigs. Again, just something really cool to bring you more into the game. Look at the aesthetics. This room reminds me a lot more of Bloodborne, a lot more of Bloodborne's Yharnam areas and such, more so than maybe Demon Souls or Dark Souls. But that's good. I think they're bringing a lot of elements from all these games. And here, as we're getting closer to the end of our video, this is where, again, this is a little bit more of a blurry picture, but look at the leaves. So you've got leaves that are kind of on these trees, and this is like something new that we haven't seen. Dark Souls is always so bleak and everything, but this kind of brings more of like almost a warmer feel, but almost like a cold, like decaying almost kind of feel. So you've got these leaves, and it's almost like autumn leaves. So in fall, you know, the leaves are dying and they fall from their trees, and so you see all these leaves on the ground, and you see like these kind of burnt sienna colors, and then you look up in the background, you can see this massive like cathedral or something with a giant light coming out of it that the player walks towards. No idea what this is, but again, this looks like an area that I'd really love to explore. And again, just just the leaves and the aesthetics and the design of the art visuals of this whole area, especially here, you can see how the leaves are kind of lining these pathways. It seems really calm. The air seems like it would be kind of brisk, a little bit snappy, but just like something that would be very quiet, and something that like is a little bit more relaxing, but a little bit more ominous again, in tandem with that, as we've seen in the other Dark Souls games. So again, just looking at the aesthetics of this area just really makes me excited for kind of the direction they're going to go with Dark Souls 3. They're putting their minds into it. Now, the one last thing I want to talk about, something that's you may have noticed throughout this whole video, is you can see a lot of the, and you can see he's using his sword arts here. You can see his numbers down at 15, and so you can actually see him in the middle of using sword arts, which is really cool. But you may have noticed that through most of this, the entire area has like been very open, and so that's what I noticed as well. It's not like corridor based. There's not very many areas that are kind of suffocating, but it seems very open. It seems like with the power of the new generation systems and the PCs that it's going to be on, you can really see how much they're putting into how much power and how much development they can put into this. Almost like it's going to be a little bit more open world than a lot of the other games have been, and that's something I'm also really excited for. The amount of paths that they can take, and I think it's just going to be brilliant. So, yeah, here we go. He's still taking on a different knight here, which is awesome. He's two-handing his greatsword. I wanted to note that the greatsword's attacks, again, were very quick. A lot quicker than you've seen in a lot of the other games. You can also see there's more in the background for him to explore, a lot of steps, a lot of different areas and paths. Dark Souls 3 is going to be an amazing game. I don't really want to say this without actually having played it myself, but looking at everything that we've had, the amount of stuff that we've seen in here, and the aesthetics and art design and visuals, it just seems so beautiful, and I am very excited to play this game. Dark Souls 3 is going to be releasing for all platforms in early 2016. Earliest reports seem to indicate that we're going to be getting it around March, so buckle up and settle down, because we still got a couple more months before this game comes out. But I do believe that we have quite a lot of reason to get very excited for this game, and you know the community, we like to roll the hype train, so I'd like to leave this video by just saying choo-choo, motherfuckers, we're off on the hype train. Thank you very much for coming down to MechaWill. Please, if you like this video, give it a like, it helps a lot, and share it around, show it to your friends, and then subscribe if you'd like to see any more. This has been MechaWill News, and thank you guys very much. I hope to see you here next time. You told me to leave you alone. My papa said, come on home. My doctor said, take it easy. But your loving was much too strong. I'm working to you. Jane.